You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
Alrighty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and I am joined, as always, by your co-host, Kevin. How we doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Got to take the day off of work, hang out with the kiddos, and just kind of relax. So it's nice. And now I get to sit back and talk football with you before the weekend gets started, man. Nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. But before we get to talking football, gotta wish you the old happy birthday here. It is your birthday. Happy birthday. So we've got cooked you a little something up here, a little birthday treat for you.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you, sir. And the fact that it's white cake is awesome. I'm not a big chocolate cake connoisseur. It's not my favorite. So a white or a yellow cake with some good white icing on it, and I can get down on that with some ice cream. It's all good.
There you go. There you are. So, guys, we've got a very fun episode for you tonight. We're going to recap some of last night's football game. It actually turned out to be a much more contested matchup than I had originally thought of. And then we're going to get into breaking down some of these games and these matchups for the weekend here, and help you guys out with some fantasy thoughts and opinions and things like that. And if you guys have any questions or comments or anything like that, make sure you throw them in there, and let's have a real fun show and a great episode with this one. So Kevin, what were your thoughts last night on that Thursday night game?
Randall Cobb got his, right? We all kind of knew he would, but I don't know that I was expecting 2 touchdowns for him to get his. Like, I thought he might have had a couple more receptions, maybe one trip into the end zone. Got the 2 tutties, so that worked out for him. Aaron Jones did exactly what we thought he was going to do. Lots of usage, lots of screen game. Even the 1-2 combination worked really well for the Packers, and I don't know how they overturned that second touchdown of Aaron Jones. I can see where people would argue, hey, it wasn't a touchdown, but the fact it was called that on the field, I didn't feel like they had clear and indisputable evidence to overturn his second touchdown, which was a bit of a bummer. It took a really good game. It took a great game and just made it a really good game for him. That Packers defense came to shine, and they played really well, like not having their defensive coordinator and going up against a really high-powered Cardinals offense, and they stymied them, right? D-Hop going down with his hammy injury and being out for most of the game in a little bit, but really he missed most of that game. Made it easier for the Packers, but even so, like, Kyler Murray just looked off. He was getting pressure in his face. He was constantly having to roll out and make some decisions that he didn't want to. So kudos to the Packers. They realized how important that game was, and they showed up and took care of business.
Absolutely. It was an interesting one there because if DeAndre Hopkins is healthy and in the game in those last couple of plays there, that ball is not going anywhere else. Right. And it also provides some more cover for some of those guys to the point where he'll probably draw a double team, and you'll see some of these guys potentially try and break open there to the point where I don't know. Yeah, that was one of the big things for me that I couldn't understand, what the thought process was there, and where the miscommunication really was there with AJ Green and Kyler Murray. How you don't even turn to look for the ball when you're going out there with 15 seconds left on the clock. Like, they aren't going to run the ball. Out of timeouts, you get tackled in bounds. That's probably going to mean the end of the game there. With DeAndre Hopkins not on the field, AJ Green becomes the default one at that point. So when you're in that situation, like, how do you not look for the ball? And that was the one that really just was a head scratcher for me.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that really kind of put the icing on the cake as far as Kyler's poor performance, right? Like, it didn't help that they ran for 3 touchdowns, right? And we know the Cardinals have been running the ball a good amount this year, but for James Conner to get 2, Chase Edmonds to get 1 after he went out with that shoulder injury there for a little bit. He came back. So that stunted what could have been a pretty decent performance out of Kyler Murray, but 0 touchdowns, the pick there at the end. Didn't do him any favors, but they'll adjust in the film room. They got a lot of big games ahead of them still. They play the Rams again. They play No, they don't play Tampa Bay this year. They avoid that one. So realistically, the Cardinals should be looking pretty nice, and they still hold serve in the NFC West because of their victory over the Rams. So it's not the end of the world. We just aren't going to see a team go, 17-0 in the regular season.
Right. That's one we'll have to wait for the next year. It was that Aaron Jones one. I was one of those guys that I could see them having overturned it just because of when they stitched it together. But there was no conclusive shot there that, showed it that he was down and had the camera angle short of the goal line, things like that. It was one of those, they showed it where you could see like a front facing type of view where they, showed him with him hitting. And then another one that you could see, him kind of straight up there to the point where, I could see them overturning that one, but I that's not one that you typically see where they do that together off a stitch type of shot and pull it through that way. So it was a little bit, interesting that they would choose to go that route.
Yeah, I thought the play calling down there on the goal line got really, really conservative. And I get it. You tried to pass the ball a couple times, and that's where you missed Devontae Adams the most, right? And with Bobby Tonyan going out with his knee injury, he's out the rest of the season now. So RIP to Bobby Tonyan. Really unfortunate for them, but I was really hoping to see something where the whole movement of the line was going to one direction, left or right, it doesn't matter, strong side, weak side, it doesn't matter, and then you find a way to leak out Aaron Jones or AJ Dillon and get them one-on-one as opposed to running Jones right up the middle. Now, I understand rewarding Jones for everything that he'd done for you that game, and he didn't have the fumble earlier, which Dillon did have, and I'm sure that played a role into why you're not sticking your bigger-bodied back in there on the 1-yard line. But I would have liked to see some flow. Like, instead of just trying to push the Cardinals off the ball, like, let's get the whole offensive line, tight ends, everybody going one direction, and then have Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones play a little counter game, right? 2 steps, you fake the handoff, Jones cuts out, and then it's either a swing pass or a little pitch or something a little bit more creative to try and get him one-on-one with either a linebacker or a safety who's covering him, and give him a better opportunity besides running into a giant pile of linebackers who were very much keying in on Aaron Jones at that point in time.
Absolutely. A bootleg, something like that as well would have been, would have been amazing. But what do we know? We're sitting here on our couch, quarterbacking the game.
Monday morning quarterback. I get
it. Exactly.
It was very vanilla in my eyes. It was just very vanilla. Like you could, okay, here we go. B gap on the left side, right? You're going between, your left guard and either your tackle or your center, depending on which hole opens up for you. And none of them really did.
Well, the same thing too, right? Like you think back to that NFC Championship game last year, a lot of criticism out there about the play calling down there towards the end and how that thing finished out there. Similar thing with last night, right? Like they got down in there, they had a chance to put the game away and really just didn't. And they stuck with it. And, it's one of those that, at the same time, if Aaron Jones gets in there, that touchdown doesn't get overturned and the call doesn't get overturned, it's a moot point at that point. But to everything that we've talked about so far, like that was one of those that you had the opportunity, having seen that not play out the best, to turn around, try something else, and you didn't. You just kept kind of going back to that one, hoping to get that extra yard or 6 inches that you were trying to get, and it just never materialized. So.
Yeah, overall, good game. I mean, I was very pleased. What's up, man? How's it going?
Hey, so Juice out chiming in. Hey, guys on YouTube, appreciate you turning in. Thanks for watching.
But yeah, good game. I was very entertained. I was pleased. I was happy to see some up and down, even with Hopkins being out, Devontae Adams being out. Like, you're definitely missing some star power with those guys either missing the game completely or 80+% of the game. But overall, it was quite entertaining. And if it wasn't for a couple of Rondell Moore, mishaps between the punt that grazed off of his fingers and the interception that he kind of tipped with one hand, and then, linebacker came down with it, Cardinals probably feel confident that playing that game again, they win it if they don't have those little miscues.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So question coming in here on the YouTube, Juzao saying he's got a couple of questions. Half point PPR, Goddard or Gronk. Also, Terry, Keenan, Deontay, got to pick two of them. So we'll start with the first one on the half point PPR, Goddard or Gronk. I'm going to go, if you're talking this week, I'm going to go with Goddard simply from the standpoint. I always like giving guys coming back off of injury a week to kind of show it and get accustomed and accumulated back to game speed, things like that. If you're talking season long, though, I'm going to take Gronk. What are your thoughts on that one? And then lead us into the pick two.
I'm going to take Goddard. For the simple fact that he's probably going to see a couple more targets than Rob Gronkowski will. Gronk has probably a better chance of scoring a touchdown based off what we saw the first couple weeks of the season. So that does make up for some of it. But I expect this Eagles game to be fairly up and down against the Lions and higher scoring with both defenses, kind of a meh performance overall. So Goddard's probably where I would be leaning on that one. As far as the pick two between McLaurin, Keenan Allen, and Deontay Johnson, I'm going with Terry McLaurin and Deontay Johnson. I like Keenan Allen just fine, but the Pats are probably going to find a way to take the passing game away, especially if Eckler can't go because of his injury. So that does worry me about Keenan Allen and Mike Williams ever so slightly. So having a choice to bench one of them is a great luxury to have. So I would play Terry McLaurin and Deontay Johnson, both clearly being the number one options in their respective offenses.
Absolutely. I would also lean with Deontay and Terry. Terry McLaurin is the second most targeted receiver in the league this year. And so volume base alone, I'm going to go that route. Same thing too with Deontay Johnson. Although Keenan Allen has been a very heavily targeted guy, we haven't necessarily see a lot of that downfield type of work there. And then when they're getting in the red zone, they're getting things like that. You're seeing the high value targets there typically go to Jared Cook. You're seeing them go to Mike Williams there. And so, Deontay Johnson is a guy that Big Ben will just, target and consistently target him, just constantly kind of moving that down the field. So I like the volume that I think that you'll see with Terry and Deontay, as well as the fact of what Kevin was mentioned, that if Austin Eckler's out on that one, the Chargers are going to be hurting in the run game, especially. And the Patriots are going to do something to try and make, that's just how Belichick works, where he tries to make you one-dimensional and take take your best player away type of thing. And if Eckler's not out there, well, the best player's Justin Herbert. And at which point, you try and take that one away and you make them very inefficient there. And so I would lean towards those two as well. All right. He's saying he's also playing Rodgers and Jones this week. See them both miss a touchdown by 1 yard. Hurts. Absolutely, it does. So.
Yes, I have a lot of Aaron Jones. He was my number 2 second round go-to. So if I couldn't get Austin Eckler in the second round, I would grab Aaron Jones. I did that in a number of different leagues that I'm in across various platforms. So I agree. I really wanted that second one to go in just for the icing on the cake, excuse me. Because when you have that big performance out of a Thursday night game, the rest of your weekend, you feel pretty good about it, regardless of what's going on.
Right.
You kind of have almost like bonus points in your back pocket, as opposed to when your Thursday night doesn't go well and your guy lays a stinker. it's a long weekend. Like, even when you try not to just sit there and focus about all the scores and everything, man, I got to have some big performances here to make up for the dud that I had, a couple nights ago, because they put me in a hole.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And it's one of those two that when you've got that Thursday night, it doesn't go necessarily to plan or doesn't have that deal. Sometimes you end up having to reach a little bit more so than you would otherwise for the Sunday and Monday games. And you're chasing points a little bit there because of, how some of the projections and how those things, that in-game looks as far as what you're doing there. So those Thursday night games can change things quite a bit. Juzau also saying that he got Darren Jones in his first and Eckler in the second. That is that's a solid start to a team. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because I had both of them inside my top 10, and I think inside my top 8. So Jones is on track for that, as is Eckler, as long as this injury doesn't hamper him too much. But both of them are well inside the top 8 right now. I think 3 and 6 respectively. So kudos to you. You're definitely getting value out of those picks.
Absolutely. So, Kevin, are you should we head on over into the week and start breaking down some Sunday games?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty. So everybody watching over on Twitter, if you got questions, things like that, make sure that you throw them out there. I won't have the ability to post your comments up here on the screen like you've seen with Juzau there over there on the YouTube, but we will get to those questions. We've got those monitored and coming in, and we'll make sure that we answer those questions that come through. So any questions, comments, things like that, be sure to throw them out. Kevin and I love answering those questions and talking through some things with y'all. And anybody out there watching as well, one of the best ways to help us out is head over to that YouTube channel, click the subscribe button, and ring that bell. We do this show live for you 3 times a week. Let's go ahead and get to our first game. First matchup, Carolina Panthers, Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are favored by 3 in this one. The over-under 46.5 points. What are your thoughts on this guy?
I like Atlanta. I think they're right before the bye week in London, the way that they played last week coming out of the bye week. We have seen 2 games in a row now where Kyle Pitts is being used a lot like the Kyle Pitts we all drafted him to be. So that's a promising output. And really, those are the 2 guys seeing so much of the lion's share, right? Like Calvin Ridley's still seeing 10 targets a game. If Kyle Pitts is seeing 9 or 10 targets a game, there's nothing wrong with that, because each one's about 20 to 25%, depending on what Matt Ryan's doing that week. So he can absolutely feed both of them. You might see a splash of Russell Gage again. I think I'd play him more as a DFS play than a season-long play, but, that's just me. As for the Carolina Panthers, please, oh please, oh please, let there be a Sam Darnold to DJ Moore sighting, because they have disappeared for the most part as far as fantasy goes. DJ Moore has a pretty safe floor of 6 catches for 87 yards. But what was helping earlier is he was seeing 23% of the target share, and he was seeing 14 targets, maybe 11 receptions for 130 and a touchdown. Like, that was the difference between 1, 2, and 3 and weeks 4 through 7. So definitely need those guys to show up. I expect them to get some garbage time points within all this regardless, because that Atlanta defense is not that great. But overall, I expect the Falcons to, I'm going to say cover. Realistically, I'm thinking push here, guys. But I'll say Atlanta to cover. And I'll say the over. I could see a 27-24 type ball game here.
Yeah, I could see that one kind of playing out there too. The implied point total is the Falcons 25, the Panthers 22 in this one. Is kind of how that one would shake out as far as an implied point total goes there. The Panthers just look bad though without Christian McCaffrey in this offense. Like, this offense seems to have a hard time really doing anything without him out there. So I'm not sure if that's a function of Joe Brady not adapting the offense there, if that's not a function of Sam Darnold, seeing some ghosts and things like that, having followed him from the Jets down here. Some of those things could be playing into it. One guy I'm not playing in this one is Robbie Anderson. I'm looking to pivot away from him. and really you shouldn't have been playing him over the last little bit, but instead of trying to find plus matchups and things like that, where I could see him doing something, I'm just going to say he's kind of off of my playable list until he proves me wrong on that one. And who knows, that could happen again with a CMC coming back, things like that. But I just find it strange. They signed him to an extension over the offseason, reunited him with his previous quarterback, and you're seeing these kind of struggles. I do like DJ Moore in this game, though. Even though the offense hasn't been great, even though they haven't been doing things, you hit the nail on the head. He still gets enough volume that he can produce for fantasy and put up a good fantasy performance for you. And DJ Moore has the playmaking ability to house one from anywhere on the field. So I could see him having a good game somewhere kind of in that 6 receptions, about 90 yards, but I see him falling into the end zone on this one here. As far as I see this one going, I see the Falcons covering, but it's going to be right there. Like I was kind of right there on that push line as well. And I see this one playing out with the Falcons 21, the Panthers 17. So I see it kind of on the underside of things. The Falcons, if you got Mike Davis on a roster, again, I'm looking to probably pivot away from him. He really hasn't been doing anything. And Cordell Patterson has really been that running back in the backfield there. So, play your Falcons accordingly. I'm staying away from the Panthers unless I've got DJ Moore on that one. Any other thoughts on this one?
I was just looking through this. I think the one thing that leaves a slight glimmer of light for Sam Darnold / DJ Moore owners is the Panthers have not been getting a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback. And typically that's when we see Sam Darnold excel for his talent level, right? Like I'm not talking, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen type numbers, but he does excel when he has time to sit back in the pocket, read the field, and he's able to get that extra half second with the ball and really go that 3 to 3.5 seconds before releasing, as opposed to when he gets hurried and he's throwing the ball in under 2.5. He's really not that good as a quick release quarterback.
Very cool. Let's go ahead and head to the next matchup here. We've got the Dolphins heading to Buffalo. The Bills are favored by 14. The over-under on this one is 48.5. What are your thoughts on this one?
I'm thinking Bills, and I'm thinking not even close. Like, I think the Bills cover the 14. I think the Bills make sure that this game ends up as an over. You might see a garbage touchdown to help get it to the over, which is possible. But overall, there's going to be a lot of Buffalo in this game. Like that defense, yes, they, struggled a little bit last week against Tennessee, but I think they rebound. And I think we see them come out with a really strong performance. So Miami's going to have an issue putting points up on the board to begin with. But as long as, they don't completely fold on themselves, I think you could see a backdoor cover for the over. But I do think this game's more than a 14-point game at the end.
Yeah, I've got it similarly as well. I see this one being very lopsided. The Bills 36, the Dolphins 13 is how I see that one kind of playing out there. And if you've got the big names on the Bills, right? Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, even add Emmanuel Sanders in there with how he's been playing there. You're really hoping that they put up enough fantasy points for you in that first half into the third quarter. Because by the time that midway through the third quarter, fourth quarter come around, I think that you're going to see the Bills just really lean on Zach Moss. Zach Moss has put up good fantasy performances out there in Bills wins, especially when they're winning big. And a lot of that has to do with how they start managing the game towards the later stretches of that one, where they're handing the ball off to him. He's getting volume to be fantasy relevant there. And I think he'll put up enough on that one. As far as the Dolphins go, this is going to be an interesting one from the standpoint that Devontae Parker may or may not play. We're still not sure of his status for Sunday yet. But even if he does play, I'm not looking to put him into any of my lineups, simply from the standpoint, again, when a guy's coming off of injury, I want to see what they look like before I'm going to try and trust the fantasy win to them if I have another way to pivot and go that route. Myles Gaskin could have some fantasy relevance in this one, even though Buffalo has had a pretty good rush defense. They give up very few points to opposing running backs, but where I think where Myles Gaskin can make some hay is some of those swing passes, some of those check down, dump off type of passes where he'll get some passing work and do that. I'm looking to play Jalen Waddle out there. He's averaging 8+ targets a game. He's got a deep threat, and the connection with Tua is certainly there. So I'm looking to play him, and really not much else out there on the Dolphins. Any other thoughts on this one?
I think Gesicki's another guy who's going to see some targets come his way, right? But it's definitely Waddle, Gesicki, and then Myles Gaskin. Now, Malcolm Brown went on IR, so there is going to be more volume funneled in towards Mike Gaskin and Savon Ahmed. So those of you who had Myles Gaskin and you've held on to him for this long, hold on to him for a little bit longer now. Like, don't just sell him for cheap. And for those of you who might need a little bit of running back depth, Myles Gaskin hasn't been good enough. You might be able to go out and get him for cheap before people are paying close enough attention that Malcolm Brown hit the IR, because it didn't make a lot of news that Brown went out. But with him going out, it is going to open up volume for Myles Gaskin. So if you need help to get through the rest of the bye weeks or injuries or what have you, Myles Gaskin might be a cheap target to take a look at, because going forward, I expect we will see closer numbers to what we saw in 2020.
Absolutely. All right, let's we got a question coming in here. Defense question: San Francisco or the Chargers this week for your defense and special teams? This one being asked by Juzal over on the YouTube.
San Francisco.
Yeah, I think that
the Bears got to show me that they can do something, and they haven't in the last 3 or 4 weeks. So I am taking San Francisco, even though they're the road team. The Chargers have the home game, but I'm going to take the road team in San Francisco at this point. If you can't throw the ball and you can't get any sort of air production against Tampa Bay, San Francisco's pass defense isn't any better, but why would I expect that you can do it against San Francisco? I expect a lot of running the ball, so it's going to be a short clock, not as many chances to go deep. So San Francisco should only have to really hold off against a couple deep passes from Justin Fields, and as long as they don't give them up, you'll be sitting pretty.
Right, absolutely. And I like that one as well, and I think that there's not much more that I can add there. So let's go ahead and head on into the next game here, and we've got great transition here. We're going to talk about the San Francisco Niners heading to Chicago, where the Niners are favored by 4. The over/under is 39.5 here. What are your thoughts?
I like San Francisco here. That game is low.
Yes.
But I think I like it low. I'm going to tell you the over because I'm not playing the under on a game that's less than a 40-point total. I think there's just too many ways to get over that. So I like San Francisco to cover. I think their ground game's solid. Yes, Khalil Herbert's been playing well. Damian Williams is back into the fold. So they'll definitely have a lot of action coming out of there. But the Niners have something that the Bears don't, and that's a quarterback who can get it to their star receiver. So Debo will have a good game and kind of eat up the middle of the field for them here. So I expect San Francisco to cover the 4 points in this one.
Yeah. And when you look at it too, right, like the Bears really, when they want to move the ball, they want to move the ball on the ground with it, whether it be with Khalil Herbert, whether that be with, Damian Williams or David Montgomery when he's healthy. And then the passing game is supposed to feed off of that, but the passing game hasn't looked very good. Anybody that drafted Allen Robinson has been crying, very big alligator tears all year because of how they've utilized him, and they just haven't looked for him, right? Allen Robinson was a guy that we all thought coming into this year was quarterback proof. Turns out that this was the year that wasn't meant to be. And so looking at it, San Francisco has given up the least amount of points to opposing running backs. They're the number they're the toughest defense to get points on for opposing fantasy running backs. You don't have your star running back in David Montgomery in there. You're dealing with your backup Khalil Herbert, who has shined and who just put up a big performance against Tampa Bay last week, who was one of the best rushing defenses and hadn't allowed over 55 yards, things like that. I understand the narrative that's there and why a lot of folks are going to put some shine on him. And I think he's a very good young player that can do some big things, but I don't see it happening 2 weeks in a row against two incredibly tough run defenses here. But I think you're right. I think that this is going to be a low-scoring game to the point where it's not going to surprise me to look up at the end of this thing and see this game be 17-13. But the fact that, and that's really kind of where I see this one playing out. So I'm going to take the under. I'm going to take the Niners to cover, but I feel like it's more of a push type of deal here. And it's a game that, quite frankly, I just hope isn't on for the local market. And typically the Bears games nor the Niners games are out here. So I'm hoping that I don't have to watch that one and we get a different set of games on CBS and Fox that day.
Yeah. Now, I will say one thing. The Colts did have a lot of success on the ground against this Niners defense. And it was a game where you expected them to run because of the monsoon that they were playing in, and the Colts still found a way. Now, their offensive line is better than Chicago's, but I don't know that San Francisco is as vaunted as they have been in years past. I think a little bit of injury on the back end has kind of kept them honest on what they do, and they're not able to stack the box because those corners and safeties don't play well in man coverage. So that tends to lead towards a little bit of running back success. But yeah, I wouldn't play Herbert. He's the flex play, right? Like he's not the guy that you're expecting to run out as your RB1. But if you're struggling for flex options, he's not a bad option. And quite frankly, he's a guy I'd keep in my back pocket because if we hear anything about Dak before these early kickoffs on Sunday, then yeah, you want to play Herbert probably instead of Amari Cooper or possibly CeeDee Lamb, because if Cooper rushes quarterback, they ain't throwing a whole lot in Dallas Sunday night.
No, and I expect that, and we'll get to the Sunday night game there as well, but I don't expect it to be a a throwing fest anyway. Yeah, I like it. Let's go ahead and head on over into our next matchup here. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers going to the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are favored by 3.5. The over-under is 42.5 on this one.
I think I like Cleveland here. Baker's going to try and give it a go. So we saw that. Nick Chubb is going to play. So that's a plus for Cleveland. So I expect a lot of Dearness Johnson and Nick Chubb. I think Dearness Johnson earned himself some playing time with the way that he performed against the Broncos last Thursday night. And he'll be able to spell Chubb regularly enough to where it's going to cap Chubb's potential. Like he's not going to see 25 plus touches. He might see 20 to 22, but he's probably not going to see much more than that. The Steelers, I expect a lot of Najee Harris and a lot of Deontay Johnson, a shot to Chase Claypool, a couple shots probably to Chase Claypool, but I think defense will win the day here. So I'm going to say the under in this game, but I like Cleveland to cover. Yeah.
It's actually funny you say that, because when I was looking through it, I really see this one playing out with about a 21-17 feel when this thing's all said and done. These AFC North teams tend to play each other very, very tough. They tend to take a lot of pride in the defenses side of things and try and play a very tough defensive matchups there. So I see the Browns covering, really being that 21-17 type of matchup. That would also bring us in at the under on this one as well. A couple of things that are going to be very interesting to keep a look at and really kind of, I think will determine a lot as far as how this game is going to play out. Is they're inevitably going to have to pass the ball a little bit, right? Baker is still dealing with that injured injury to his non-throwing shoulder. And so it'll be interesting to see how some of this looks and works, because if you can see the Steelers come in, get some pressure on it, put some hits on Baker, what is that going to do? And is that going to be one that causes him an early exit? Is that going to be one that, they're having to go through progression so quickly that they're not necessarily, unlocking the full potential of that Browns offensive playbook there, to the point where you see it more of a, like Big Ben on the other side of the ball. He gets the ball out in, 2 seconds type of thing on every one of those things. And you see these short, quick hitting type of passes. So that's one of the things that I'm also very interested to see how this Browns offense looks. Do they take a little bit longer shots down the field? Because I think that with that injury, they're going to try and protect Baker a little bit, as they probably should. And I think that also limits some of his mobility that we're used to seeing, and allowing him to try and get out the pocket, extend plays a little bit there, to the point where I think you'll see a lot more of a stationary Baker, a lot more in the pocket, quick hitting type of passes when they throw the ball. And that's going to also limit his upside tremendously there as well. Any other thoughts on this one?
No, I agree with that. A lot of slants, quick outs, your screen game, right? If you can get the run set up, your screen game. I don't expect too many deep passes down the field for Baker, because it means more time in the pocket holding on to the ball. And yes, the Browns are 4-3 and fighting, for wild card, and still well within the division race, with the Bengals leading that division. But they can't put them in harm's way. Like they don't stand. I shouldn't say they don't stand a chance with Case Keenum, but I think their odds significantly decrease with Case Keenum as their quarterback, as opposed to Baker Mayfield.
Right. And we've seen that play out before. Case Keenum is a very capable backup quarterback. But this is one of those that, and we talked about this pretty extensively last week as well, where that Browns offense is a much more condensed version with Keenum in there than with Baker in there, even though Case Keenum has been the backup in Cleveland for a year and a half, and the fact that he was with Kevin Stefanski back in Minnesota as well when he was a starter. So, I think that the Browns' upside becomes severely limited if Baker misses extended periods of time with this one. So I'm looking for them to try and protect him as much as they can on this one. Let's go ahead and head over to the next matchup. This one here is one that I've gone back and forth on tremendously. It's the Philadelphia Eagles going to Detroit to face the Detroit Lions. Philadelphia is favored by 3.5. The over-under on this one is 48. What are your thoughts here?
I like the Lions, and I like the over. I feel like this is it. Philly hasn't shown me enough here in the last couple of weeks. If we're not careful, we could see Jalen get the hook in this game if he doesn't start off strong enough, as they look for some sort of signs of life there in Philly. And I hope not, because Jalen Hurts is great for fantasy. He's just not winning the games in Philly that they want. But Hawkinson, I expect him to make a showing and kind of emerge here. DeAndre Swift will continue to ball out. Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goddard, like your standard cast of characters. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, will reemerge after completely disappearing last week. We'll see him with some targets here, but I think they find a way to get over the 48 total, and I expect the Lions to win outright.
Yeah, that was one. Like I said, I've gone back and forth on this one, where it was a very confident that the Eagles would win this one, to the more and more and more I look at this, the more I'm leaning towards the Lions as well. And this has the feeling of this one coming down to the wire, and it being a field goal being kicked on either side that's going to win this one is how I kind of see this one playing out. So that being the case, I do like the Lions. I do like the over as well. I think that there's not going to be a ton of defense played on this one. It's going to be real interesting to see how this looks and works from the standpoint that the Lions give up a ton of points to opposing running backs. You've got Kenneth Gainwell that's going to be in there. You're going to have Boston Scott in there. So I'm very curious to see what the distribution really looks like with Miles Sanders having gone to the IR. We've talked about some of the play calling in the past as far as the Eagles go, and them not necessarily setting things up with scripted runs and actual called play runs. So yeah, I could see that very much being the case where this swings to the Lions, who are playing very emotional, very, and I think there's going to be a lot of energy here. And so, yeah, I'm going to also take the Lions. I'm going to take the over on this one as well. And I'm looking for actually a lot of fantasy points to be scored in this one. This isn't one that necessarily, when you were looking at the slate of games, that immediately jumped out as a high fantasy production thing. But this is one of those that this one here could provide a bunch of different nuggets and a lot of very interesting options for some DFS type of plays as well. Let's go ahead and head on. Any other thoughts on it?
No, I think we kind of covered this one. It honestly, I expect this to be pretty entertaining, even though both the teams' records are not stellar. I really hope that this might actually be the morning game on Fox, because I would watch this.
Yeah, I would as well. I would also watch the game that we're heading over to as well, and that is come on now. There we go. That is the Tennessee Titans heading to the Indianapolis Colts. Indy's favored by 3.5. The over-under on this one's 51. What are your thoughts here?
I like the under in this game. I think defense is going to show up a little bit better. I was kind of on tilt this game when Tennessee opened up as the favorite. The Colts were +1 as it opened, and the game line has swung to, the Colts favored by 2.5. I don't know what has happened in the betting world to see a 3.5 point swing in a game for this type of magnitude. I say that meaning if Tennessee wins this game, they clearly have an inside track and a 4-game lead on the Colts in the division.
Mm-hmm.
But man, oh man, I'm going to take Tennessee here. I think they're starting to click. I think Tannehill's starting to play a bit better. AJ Brown is seemingly finding ways to, whether it's play through injuries or just not get, as dinged up. Derrick Henry is still going to do his, amazing type things. And while the Colts have been gritty and fought and stayed in all these games, I just think Tennessee has a little bit more momentum than Indianapolis does at this point.
You very well could be correct on that one. I'm going to go the opposite approach on this one. I do think that we're going to see the under on it. I do see the Colts winning this one. So I'm going to take them, and I think that they're going to win it by so I've got the Colts to cover. I've got the under being hit because I think this will be a defensive matchup here. The Colts do line up and match up fairly well as far as the run goes. So, you're not going to stop Derrick Henry. You're just not. The best that you can do is you're going to hope to try and contain him. And with Julio Jones not playing in this game, he's already been ruled out. There's a couple of things that I see shifting as far as how that defense can line up and can match up now against Tennessee that they couldn't have done with a healthy Julio Jones in the lineup. So I see them actually stacking the box to the point where we've probably got 8 guys in the box. You see a guy that's going to shadow AJ Brown on the outside, and you're going to have a safety playing high on him as well, to the point where he's going to see a lot of double coverage, 8 in the box, and you're going to see Indianapolis Colts say, beat us with anybody else. Beat us with Ryan Tannehill throwing the ball to Jeffrey Swaim or Anthony Ferkser or Josh Reynolds. Try and beat us through this and just see what you can do. And on the flip side, I think that you're going to see a heavy dose of Jonathan Taylor, as well as the fact that you'll get a couple of deep shots and you'll get a couple of shots with from Wentz to Michael Pittman, who both have been playing pretty well, right? Like Pittman's becoming that really just kind of good 50-50 contested catch kind of guy that we started seeing a lot of glimpses of last year, and he's starting to bring that forth even more so. But Carson Wentz right now is having tremendous success throwing the deep ball, as well as the fact that he's the number 10 ranked quarterback over the last 3 weeks, something that a lot of, for fantasy points per, as far as fantasy goes and points produced over the last 3 weeks, something that hasn't necessarily been showcased a lot out there and is kind of going under the radar a little bit. So I like the Colts to win this one. I like the under. I think this is going to be a tough, gritty defensive game that's a field goal type of thing. set up kind of on the last second deal again. So this one has a 24-21 feel to me. Any other thoughts here?
No, I will tune in if it's showing in our area. I like a lot about this game. Competitive, that it has some gusto within their division, and to really see if the Colts have overcome their gauntlet through the first 7 weeks of the season, because they had a hell of a schedule to start the season, and really to come out 3-4, I don't think is terrible for them. So they got to feel pretty good about themselves here heading into week 8.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and head on to this is one that I don't think any of us really thought that the Bengals at this point would be leading the AFC as far as the seeding goes, but the Bengals are heading to the Jets. Cincinnati's favored by 10.5. Over under on this one is 43. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking the Bengals. I'm taking the under because I don't think the Jets have a way to put points on the board. Corey Davis, I think, is going to be missing this game. Obviously, Zach Wilson is missing this game. So you're starting, a known
Flacco or Mike White.
Yeah, and really, I don't think Flacco's cleared in time. So I think you're starting White for this week, and then Flacco, we'll see him for the next week or two until Zach Wilson comes back, maybe longer. But this Bengals defense has been playing very well at the moment. The Jets defensive backs have been playing very well. So I do think that that's going to find a way to limit some of the production through the air, but their rushing defense is terrible. So Joe Mixon, I expect to have a big, big game and really kind of take the air out of the ball. So I could see this game, scoring, something, 27-10. I mean, something like that where, you find a way, you cover because the defense is so good, but I just don't see how the Jets can score any points for us to get to this 43 over.
Right. That's where I'm at with you as well. I've got Bengals. I've also got the under. Just again, I think the way this is going to play out there is you're going to see Joe Mixon early, Joe Mixon often, with some shots. Like, I'm still a fan of playing Jamar Chase out there, and I think he's going to get a couple of deep shots and a couple of big plays there. But I don't look to Joe Burrow, throwing the ball 30 to 40 times in this game. I see Joe Burrow probably throwing the ball, really closer to that 25 to 30 type of range there, just because of how they're going to game script and they're going to play this thing out. They'll take their shots, things like that. You may see some big, long connections to Jamar Chase. You'll see some T. Higgins, potentially have a fairly decent game as well. But one of those that it's the point that I would pivot off of both T. Higgins, certainly going to pivot off of Tyler Boyd. And I would take the deep shot on Jamar Chase in this one. But I think you're going to see Joe Mixon get 25 plus touches in this one and 25 plus opportunities in this one. And he is going to absolutely shine this week. I think that he is going to have a monster performance and DFS. Like, that's a guy that I'd be looking to go through and play. The only worry is there that, there's going to be a ton of lineups out there with Joe Mixon. So you may have to pivot off that one to try and find some parity in some other places there. But any other thoughts on this one?
No, I think you got it spot on. I could see Joe Burrow being 20 of 27 or 20 of 28, something like that, for like 265 to 270 yards and
1 to 2 touchdowns.
1 to 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
Like 2 sounds right, but it may not even be if you're running Joe Mixon all that much, right? So solid performance, but not a great performance expected out of Joe Burrow this week.
Right. All righty, let's go ahead and head on out to Houston. The Los Angeles Rams meeting up with the Houston Texans. LA's favored by 14.5. The over-under is 47.5. What are your thoughts here?
Very much the same as the Jets scenario, right? Like, I just don't see how Houston scores points. They haven't been scoring points. I don't think that it's going to get any easier with Sam Darnold and company chasing after Davis Mills for this last week until Tyrod's kind of ready to play. So, I mean, I don't know that I'm starting any Houston Texan anywhere for any reason this week. Yes, they got rid of – I shouldn't say got rid of. Yes, they traded Mark Ingram back to New Orleans. So David Johnson, if you're in super deep leagues, might be worth a pickup just to stash on your bench and see how that kind of sorts out for you. But overall, it's going to be the LA Rams and their show. I expect Henderson to have a huge game for the Rams. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods will continue to do their things, and Matt Stafford's always a safe play. So I don't see how they don't cover. But I mean, I think they win by 17 to 20 points easily, and I'm still playing the under, because Houston can't score.
Right. This one's not going to surprise me if you see a Houston, put up 10 points or less in this one. So at that point, even if you have Los Angeles blow up and just light up the scoreboard and put up 35 points, you're still going to come in with the under on that one. So I'm right there with you. So I like the Rams. I like the under. I like the fact that I think Darrell Henderson will have a big game. It was one of those that we didn't necessarily see last week when we all thought that he was going to have a monster game. The matchup was prime, things like that. So I think he'll have a bounce back type of performance. Absolutely starting Cooper Kupp, who's leading the league in targets to a wide receiver. And, this is one of those that it's not going to surprise me. If I've got Robert Woods, I might be looking for another pivot there because, again, he very well may get kind of game scripted out on this one because by about the third quarter, I think this is going to be just put the ball on the ground and take the air out of it and just run the clock. So I'm, one of those that some of the fantasy upside for some of these Rams players, I think, are going to be limited outside of that running back room. So any other thoughts here?
Not a one.
All right, let's go ahead and head over to the other Los Angeles team. The New England Patriots meeting up with the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are favored by 4.5. The over-under on this one, 49.5. What are your thoughts here?
I expect New England to run the ball and continue to feature Damian Harris. He's we're going on 2 consecutive weeks of him just balling out. I think they're going to try and make it 3. That's where this offense is most effective as Mac Jones continues to learn and develop. Outside of that, I mean, I would like to see a Jacoby Myers sighting in the end zone. He got one called back last week because of a holding call, or I believe it was. So trying to get there, but really it's going to be tough to hit the over in this one. Again, I think New England's defense is good enough to hold the Chargers down a little bit. If Austin Eckler can't play, I think that makes them extremely one-dimensional. And while while Justin Herbert, there we go, that's the name, Justin Herbert, is playing at an MVP caliber level, Bill Belichick has a knack for making you very uncomfortable, and the defense in New England's good enough to do that. So LA will cover just off of raw talent, but I'm going the under.
Yeah, this is one of those that this game is going to swing drastically for me depending upon Austin Eckler's status on this one. If Austin Eckler plays, I think you're right. I think that the Chargers cover. If he plays, I actually like the over on that one. So if Austin Eckler plays, I like the Chargers. I like the over. If he doesn't play, that actually swings it over to New England for me, where I think New England is going to be a realistic shot at being in this game to win it down the stretch. So I see them being able to cover the 4.5 there, and I like the under. So this is one of those that it's going to swing very, very heavily on what Austin Eckler is able to do, which it's not necessarily trending in a great direction there, right? Like they came off the bye. He wasn't on an injury designation list. Practices, goes on the list, misses another practice. So this isn't looking necessarily great for his availability here. So this is one that if he plays, I like the Chargers. I like the over. If he doesn't play, I like New England to cover. I like the under to be stated on that one. And this is the one that is a very, very volatile game for me that I could see go on a many, many different ways. That this is actually the toughest game that I had looking at to try and rank it either way. Any other thoughts?
No, should be a good one to see how it shakes out though. Another game. I like this game on a viewership standpoint.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and head over to Seattle. The Jacksonville Jaguars meeting up with the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks are favored by 3.5. The over-under is 44. What are your thoughts here?
I like Jacksonville to cover. I like the Seahawks on the money line, though. I think it is a 3-point game. And really, I'm thinking I want to say the over, but the fact that Geno Smith is quarterback is what's scaring the crap out of me. So I'm going to say the under here. But Trevor Lawrence is learning. He's getting better. He'll continue to kind of find ways. But I think it's going to be a lot of James Robinson going up into Seattle and dealing with the 12th man up there as they try and scratch and claw for every win that they can get. And that's just going to be an atmosphere that Lawrence hasn't seen in the NFL just yet. So I think that helps him. Tyler Lockett, I am finding any way possible to pivot off of. Keep an eye on Alex Collins because he's questionable coming into this game. So we got to see kind of where the injury designations are and all that good stuff. But you're playing DK. If Collins goes, I can see a situation where you feel like you might have to play him in your flex, but I would really try and pivot to a wide receiver or something else in another game because I'm just not blown away by this matchup at all. This is probably my least favorite matchup of the entire week, just based off of don't give a crap what happens in this game.
Yeah, that's a lot to it. I do think that Seattle finds a way to win at home. That's an incredibly tough environment to go into and do anything with, like you already said. And Trevor Lawrence still learning some of that at an NFL perspective here. But this is a game that we talked about it last week, having several games that we saw a hard time for teams getting to 20 points on either side of the ball, and this is one of those games that it would not surprise me if looking up the final score on this one that neither team got to 20 points there. So I'm taking the under on this one. I think Seattle finds a way to win it, but I'm not very confident on the spread. I'll go with Seattle to cover just because I think that they'll find a way to do it. And this is going to be a big James Robinson week. And if Jacksonville is going to try and keep this thing close, it's going to come on James Robinson's legs and not necessarily on anything else there. And Seattle's vulnerable against the run. We've seen that time and time again where, opposing offenses come in and they're able to put up points on the ground, and Seattle's defense gives up the third most points to opposing running backs. So I look for James Robinson to have a big week. And outside of James Robinson, I'm not really excited to play anybody else in this matchup.
Yeah, I think if you get desperate, just because the Seahawks give up so many yards, Laviska Shenault, I think he's good for about 70 yards. He may or may not fall into the end zone. Who knows? And then, yeah, I'm just not in love with this one at all. And I still can't trust who Trevor Lawrence is actually throwing the ball to on any week, which struggles. So Lawrence himself might be a solid second quarterback type play, especially in a super flex. I'm not playing him in a single quarterback league this week unless I absolutely have to. And really, I'm staying away from pretty much everybody except DK and James Robinson.
Yep. All righty, let's go ahead and hit up our hometown Denver Broncos. The Washington football team coming to the Mile High City to face Denver. Denver is favored by 3. What's the over-under is 44.5. What are your thoughts here?
The last 3 weeks, I picked Denver to cover in these field goal type games, and the last 3 weeks I've been wrong. So I'm hoping for a reverse jinx here is what I'm going for. I'm taking Washington to win outright. And I'm doing that hoping my Broncos find a way to pull through. Jerry Jeudy is expected back, which does help Teddy Two Gloves. But Washington kind of found their pass rush a little bit last week, guys. And if they do, Denver's offensive line isn't going to be able to hold up to that very well. So I expect Terry McLaurin to feast. Taylor Heineke was using his legs a bit last week, which will give the Broncos fits if they're not prepared for it. So Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, I like his prop at least. Like he was set at like 45.5 yards when the player prop came out. So I like him to go over that as far as rushing yards goes. But yeah, I'm going to be at the game and root my Broncos on, but they got to show me something because it's been pretty pathetic the last 4 weeks.
It has not been great. Not been great at all. And who knows, maybe Jerry Jeudy coming back helps out, Teddy Bridgewater here to the point where we'll see some fantasy relevance. We'll see the Broncos move the ball, things like that. But the Broncos, actually the Washington football team has only covered against the spread one time this whole season. So I'm not expecting that to change. I'm going to take the Broncos to cover. I'm going to take the under on this one because, again, if the Broncos are going to win, the Broncos have got to win a game that the other team doesn't put up more than 20 points. And so that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go with the Broncos winning this one. 21-17 is how I see this one playing out.
Fun fact, the Broncos have been favored in every game this season.
And we've seen how well that's worked out.
But, I mean, even against the Ravens, they were favored because the Ravens were coming off that crappy performance against the Lions, and they thought the Broncos, they were the -2, I think they were, heading into that game. Like, the Broncos have been favored in all 8 games they've played or going to have played this season. Like, how are you favored in every game and you're a 3-4 team? It's just
right.
It's the coaching. It speaks to how frustrating the coaching is and how they're not able to get the most out of those players. And if we thought the seat was hot after Thursday night last week when the Broncos went into Cleveland and lost, the Boo Birds will be for real in Denver this weekend if they don't get out to a hot start.
Yeah, absolutely. I am really liking Terry McLaurin in this one. I think that he'll do some good work there. I do like Cortland Sutton, especially in this one. The Washington football team gives up points to opposing wide receivers like it's their job to let them get fantasy points, not stop them. So I like the two alpha wide receiver ones in this game. I think they're going to have very, very big games. Staying away from Melvin Gordon if I can pivot away from him. Javonte Williams. If I have to play him, I wouldn't mind that. Antonio Gibson hasn't necessarily looked like the Antonio Gibson that we were expecting coming into this one, and I could see this one being a pretty even split between him and J.D. McKissick when it's all said and done here. So I'm going to take the Broncos to cover the under, and I may end up doing some other things in that game.
Sutton has a pretty interesting player prop right now. He's 67 is where it's at currently, receiving yards for the game. I like the over.
Yeah,
Sutton's been doing a good job being the focal point, and even with G coming back in. Teddy likes to take shots down the field with Sutton, and he really likes to do it at home when he can kind of manipulate the offense a little bit better. So I'm going to say one of those deep shots hits this week, and Sutton does hit the over on his player prop of 67 yards.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. Let's go ahead and head over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are heading to the New Orleans Saints, and Tampa Bay is favored by 4.5 in this one, over under 49.5. What are your thoughts here?
I like Tampa, and I like the over. Tampa is not going to make the same mistake that Seattle did. They are going to realize that Alvin Kamara can actually play. And, oh, hey, by the way, we might want to try and stop that guy. On the flip side, Mike Evans is historically bad against the Saints and Marcus Lattimore. So I expect a Chris Godwin day. Gronk is coming back, so that helps Tom Brady. Antonio Brown is not playing. So You'll run out with Evans, Godwin, and Gronk as kind of your three big name guys out there. Leonard Fournette has been playing very, very well, but I think New Orleans will do a better job shutting down the run than what we've seen lately. So I don't know that Fournette's going to have a great game, guys. So just be prepared for that. But Tom Brady's going to continue to do Tom Brady type things. I expect every week, I expect Tom Brady for 300 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns. Like, haven't quite hit that every single week, but he's the number 1 quarterback in fantasy right now because he just continues to throw touchdowns. And I expect it to continue in the Big Easy.
Yes, I would agree with that. The Saints, that's where they're vulnerable, is through the air. Same thing with Tampa Bay. That secondary is a little bit beat up there. Hopefully you'll see Jameis Winston be able to actually connect on, 5-yard throws instead of throwing the ball, 6 feet over somebody's head there. But
Traquan Smith could actually catch the ball instead of just run his mouth. He might be all right.
That's also true there too. So I actually looked for this one to be a little bit of a shootout here. I think the over will be hit. I do like the Buccaneers to cover. It's one of those that I've also gotten kind of back and forth as far as the Mike Evans, the Mike Evans narrative here, because you're right. When Marshawn Lattimore plays him, he typically shadows him all over the field, things like that, and does a pretty good job shutting Mike Evans down here. So that's one of those that I kept kind of going back and forth. Is that narrative continue? Is this the one that's going to kind of break that streak? And I think the narrative continues where you're going to see Brady just take the easier passing routes there, with it being Godwin, with it being Gronk. And I see a very big game coming from Chris Godwin in this one. I think you're right. Leonard Fournette's a guy that is a flex type of play, but I would pivot for if I had a really great option there instead. And Alvin Kamara, if he's going to put up points, it's going to come from short dump offs and him, being more an Alvin Kamara running back instead of what we've seen through a lot of the different season where he gets a lot of his work on the ground, things like that. It's going to have to come in a similar fashion to what he did last week, where he's moving the ball in those short kind of passes and making a guy miss and get up the field.
Yeah, I expect Kamara's not going to be on the field as much as he was Monday night. With Mark Ingram coming back in town, we now know what to expect, right? Sean Payton is going to try and have lightning strike twice. Those two were very good as a combo for years, and I think they're going to try and do that again. So you'll see Ingram spell Kamara a little bit more. They're not going to shy away from him taking the ball and taking a series or 2 series away and just letting Kamara get some good rest. As far as Mike Evans goes, I think this is kind of one of those weeks where you kind of see 2 catches on 5 targets for 15 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Like, this just feels like that game for Mike Evans where he puts up just enough fantasy points to, not kill your team. Because you got to play him, right? And most teams don't have a good enough option to pivot away from a Mike Evans. You have to play him. But I don't expect him to meet or succeed his projections across any platform.
I would agree with you. Let's go ahead and head on over to the Dallas Cowboys heading to the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota, I was actually surprised when I looked at this one and saw the Vikings are favored by 2.5, the over-under 53.5. What are your thoughts here?
This is another game that moved 3.5 points. When it opened, Minnesota was +1. The talk and the news about Dak Prescott and possibly missing the game because of his calf has obviously been the driving factor for the swing in this one. And at least I know why the game's swinging. The Tennessee and Indianapolis game is still a head scratcher, but this one, you know why. It's your quarterback. Dak playing or not, I expect Zeke to absolutely feast this game. Mm-hmm. I expect Dalvin Cook to get his full workload this game. Mm-hmm. I don't love Adam Thielen in this one because I don't think there's going to be enough targets to go around. So I think Jefferson's going to see his targets. It's Traquan Diggs, though, so it depends on if he follows him all over the field and what that kind of looks like. So Jefferson is definitely going to be targeted in the passing game. Hopefully he's able to produce for fantasy owners. Other than that, it's a lot of running backs. Even if Dak Prescott plays, I expect they're not going to have him drive the ball down the field as much, right, and push off of that calf. Screen passes, quick slants, quick outs, little hitch routes, that type of thing. Get the ball out quick. Don't let Dak run around and get pressured and do that type of thing, I believe is what the Cowboys are going to implement this game, whether he plays or not, because that game plan also works for Cooper Rush and not having him scramble around the field and get flustered. So that game plan will play with both quarterbacks this week. I don't know that it varies a whole hell of a lot. And it's really, can Minnesota keep up with Dallas's offense, even though Dallas is running the ball? If they can, we're going to have a very entertaining game on our hands. If not, Dalvin Cook might kind of get phased out a little bit while Kirk Cousins tries to force it down the field. And that the season is where the Cowboys are feasting, right? Being opportunistic on these turnovers when teams get one-dimensional against them.
Right. Yeah, I do like Dallas. I think Dallas will win outright, but if you're going to give me points, I'll absolutely take him. So I do like Dallas in this one if Dak plays. If Dak doesn't play, I think you're right. I think it actually swings to Minnesota's favor there. Same type of thing too. If Dak plays, I see the over getting hit. If he doesn't play, the under comes in for me. But all of that being said there, this one here has some interesting narratives for me because I think you're right. I think this is going to be a heavily run game, regardless of whether or not Dak was playing in this one. And that was even the case that I think it was going to be a very heavy run game unless, or even if Dak was 100% healthy and didn't have any lingering issues coming into this one. So that being the case, I think that you're going to see Dalvin Cook get 25 opportunities in this game. I think you're going to see Zeke right there with him with between about 20, 25 opportunities. You're going to see Tony Pollard get a fair bit of run in this one as well, to the point where you'll probably see Tony Pollard get between 10 and 15 touches when this thing's all said and done and those type of opportunities. I am a little nervous as far as playing Amari Cooper, playing CeeDee Lamb, playing the Dalton Schultz, that trio of Dallas pass catchers because of the fact that of what you just said. I don't think that you're going to see Dallas drive the ball down the field. If Dak plays, and I see them really not driving the ball down the field if it's Cooper Rush. So that limits a little bit of my excitement towards CeeDee Lamb here. Although I one of the things that I kind of have a little bit different stance on was the Adam Thielen. I think he could have a pretty decent game here because I think you're right. I think that they're going to have Diggs shadow Jefferson on this one and really try and limit his upside there. And this is one of those that I still see Kirk Cousins probably going to throw the ball somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30 times when it's all said and done. 30 to 35 is where I kind of had that one scripted out there. So that being the case, like where's the targets going to go to? They'll probably still take 7, 8, 9 shots towards Justin Jefferson, trying to get him open, trying to get a playmaker the ball. But Adam Thielen, I'm probably going to see him. When I was looking through that, it's 7, 8 targets somewhere in there. And when he's getting targeted that way, there's a good chance he falls into the end zone and he probably catches, 6 of those 8 targets for somewhere around about 60 yards. So I can see him with, 6 for 60 and a touchdown, which is going to be a pretty decent fantasy game there. Tyler Conklin's a guy that I'm having to play in our home league, but I'm not necessarily excited about that. I think that he'll get enough volume to maybe be relevant there, but again, not super excited that route. Any other thoughts on this guy?
The line in this game just moved again. It is now Minnesota -3.
Wow.
So we've moved a full 4 points in this game. Now, I get it. It's centralized around Dak Prescott and his ability to play, but right. I'm telling you right now, I just happily smashed Dallas to cover here because I think they have enough talent to win this game, regardless of who's playing quarterback for them.
I like it. It's very interesting. You usually don't see those lines move a full 4 points inside of a couple of days there. That's some crazy things going on there with that one. Let's go ahead and head on over to the Monday night game, and you've got the New York Giants going to Kansas City to face the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are favored by 9.5 here. The over under 52.5. What are your thoughts on this one?
They think a lot of this depends on which New York Giants receivers are actually healthy enough to play, right? Doesn't look like Saquon's going to go. It doesn't look like Kenny Galladay's going to go. We expect Darius Slayton to go again. So now it's Sterling Shepard and Kadarius Toney.
Both of which look like they're trending to go.
Yes, Toney finally got a full practice in today, so that's a good thing for him. If he goes, Kadarius Toney, I think, will see a ton of targets, and Sterling Shepard as well. I could see both of them with 10-plus targets by the time this game's done and over with. Kansas City's defense has not been good. The offense has been pressing. Now, there are a few better get-right games than going up against the New York Giants at home when you're trying to get right. So I expect the Chiefs to cover. I expect them to start to figure themselves out and kind of right the wrongs, turnovers, trying to eliminate those and just play a full game without Patrick Mahomes playing outside of himself. He's just pressing right now, and he just needs to, take a page out of Aaron Rodgers' playbook and relax. You guys have enough talent to get through it. Just relax. You're starting your suspects. I'm Kadarius Toney. I'm playing as a flex play in a couple different leagues because I like having a guy on Monday night. And quite frankly, if he's going, I expect him to see a bunch of targets. You're playing your standard Chiefs players. You're playing Mahomes. You're playing Darrell Williams as your running back if you have him. Obviously, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. So it's should be a high-scoring affair, and it should be an entertaining game, at least through the first half to three quarters. But I do expect Kansas City to be able to put them away mid-third quarter and hold them off in the fourth and not create too much buzz about this.
Right. Yeah, I like that. I like the Chiefs to cover. I like the over on this one. You said it really well there. Play your usual suspects because I think they're all going to have pretty good games. I do really like the Sterling Shepard and the Kadarius Toney there because, again, I've got those guys statted out for double-digit targets. I see them doing some very big things there. Kadarius Toney's a guy that could make a guy miss and do some very, very big things there. Whereas Sterling Shepard's going to just be that PPR monster that's going to, slowly kind of methodically march the ball down the field type of thing when they need to and picking up 7-8 yards an attempt there. So I really see to the point where you're going to see Sterling Shepard probably somewhere with eight receptions, about 84 yards, somewhere in that range there. I don't think he finds the end zone. Kadarius Toney, I think you're probably going to see him that one's not going to surprise me if I see him get to triple digits in receiving yards there. So I see him having a very big game. I think that you're right. This is a get right game for the Chiefs in which you'll see Travis Kelce, really look like the number one tight end in the league, especially for fantasy. I think you'll see a Tyreek Hill return to form there to the point where you'll probably see them get one up and over the top on this one. And outside of that, I'm not looking too many other places. One of the interesting things too is Jabril Peppers for the Giants also is not going to be playing in this game for the defensive side of things. So that actually hurts the Giants defense even more there as well. So that being the case, again, I like the Chiefs and I like the over on that one.
Yeah. Just food for thought for those of you who have Dak Prescott, especially in single quarterback leagues. If you are struggling and you don't want to take that gamble, Daniel Jones is on a lot of waiver wires, and this matchup is not a bad matchup for him. So if you are having reservations about Dak Prescott, or even if you're not, but just kind of see how this game flow is going to be looking, it is quite possible to foresee Daniel Jones outscoring Dak for this week. Just due to matchup, injury situations, game script, everything else. So don't be afraid to pivot if news comes out first thing tomorrow morning or at some point throughout the day, or if you just don't want to fight it, right? Because coming into Sunday night, a lot of times you don't have any other option to pivot to. So maybe you grab Daniel Jones and stash him on your bench as a just in case. So that way, if you get late news, 90 minutes before kickoff, holy crap, Dak's not going to play. He tweaked it in warmups or something like that. You have a good pivot to change to who's in a matchup that's favorable to put points up for you.
Absolutely. That was actually a good point there. We had that question come in on the last Sunday live show as far as, some of the strategy behind setting lineups, things like that. If you've got guys going in the early games and some guys going later, right? So if I've got somebody sitting in my sitting in my flex spot that I have and I want to play, but say for instance, I've got one of the I've got Kadarius Toney sitting in a flex type of deal, but I know that I want to play him, things like that. Move those things around to the point where the flex actually gives you the flexibility, like Kevin's talking about there, not to the point where you're putting a guy that's going to play at the Sunday morning games or the early games on that one. And you've got a guy sitting in like your wide receiver 2 or your running back 2 that's going into either the Sunday night game or the Monday night game. So that way, if something does break to the point where those guys aren't going to play, that you've got the ability to pivot and you're not trying to find a wide receiver or a running back to try and mix into that lineup there last minute there. And that's one of the big things that'll help you out there as well. So question coming in on YouTube. Avery over on YouTube. Yo, I'm in a really deep league. What should I do with AJ Green?
Trust that he's actually going to run the route and not just try and block a cornerback with 15 seconds to play.
Yes.
Being in a really deep league, AJ Green's not a bad option, right? Like they had a tough time connecting against a Packers team that was on fire last night and really out to prove something. But if this hamstring injury continues for DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green is a viable starter week in and week out. We've seen him put up some solid games. He had been pretty damn reliable up until last night, where he kind of put up a bit of a stinker for you, and I understand that. But I don't know. You definitely don't want to drop him. So first and foremost, he deserves a roster spot. And it's quite possible with that high-powered Cardinals offense that he becomes kind of the number one guy if Hopkins can't go for a week or so with the hamstring injury. So be patient. If you're getting interest on him from other teams in your league, check it out, see if it's worth it, and makes your roster better. But he's definitely not someone that you want to toss out to the waivers because he'll get snatched right up.
Right. And when you look at it too, right, he's looking right now, he's averaging 5 targets a game, even after last night's deal where he didn't necessarily have the best production on it. So that being the case, like he's getting enough targets to be a flex type of worthy play for you week in, week out, things like that. And depending upon your roster construction, you may need to roll that route. But, like Kevin just said, that if DeAndre Hopkins misses, you're going to see those targets then get split up even more so to the point where you probably see AJ Green tick up into the 7-8 targets a game type of category. And if you've got a wide receiver that's getting 7 to 8 targets a game, like that's fantasy gold right there, especially from a guy that you weren't looking to necessarily have to play week in, week out, like your 32-team league there. I just saw that one come in there. So those 32-team leagues, they're tough. They are, Kevin and I have done a couple of those things where, there's nothing on the waiver wires. You're trying to make trades. You're really having to scout and do your due diligence in draft picks and making sure those draft picks hit for you in order to bring those things to light there. So when you've got a guy like an AJ Green that, most likely was left for dead by somebody else in the league, or you had hung on to it. I'm not sure if it's a dynasty league or a redraft type of league there, but more often than not, something like that, like somebody probably dropped him for if it was a dynasty thing, or you managed to hang on to him through those injury plagued years that he just didn't play. So the fact that you're able to get the production that I think that you're going to get for him, that's worthwhile noting. And you know what, maybe you can reach out to another team in that league that needs a little bit of help there, and you could potentially move him if DeAndre is going to miss some time there as well, because you could potentially see an uptick and you could potentially get something back on that help, just depending upon whether you're in win now or if you're in, you're in a little bit of a rebuild. So that would be something else to kind of consider there as well. Any other thoughts on that one?
No, sir. We got our slate covered here.
All righty. Well, guys, if y'all have any other questions, throw them out here real quick. We're getting ready to sign off, but if you have any questions, we'll hit it up, answer them for you real quick. We'll also be going live on Sunday morning at 11:45 a.m. Eastern time to help you with any start sits, any matchup decisions, anything like that. We'll certainly be able to help you out there as well. We've also got the show next Tuesday at 11 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be going over the waiver wires, reveal the results of our pines, our shines, our clutches, not so much, as a lot of those types of things that we'll be running through there as well. We've also got a great little segment that we've been kind of cooking up here as well that Kevin and I are very excited to debut on the Tuesday show there as well. So that one should be a lot of fun. Kevin, any final thoughts for the listeners?
Now that we are past By-Ageddon and really getting into it, so you got to be making your move. Like, this is where you're separating yourself. You're trying to establish yourself, if you're in playoff contention, to firmly get inside the playoffs and see what happens. So everything's on the table. After 7 weeks, we know what to expect out of these guys and kind of what's been game scripted for them. So pay attention to that. Hit the waiver wire hard every single week. Look at trade options if they are to be had. And best of luck. Hopefully everyone has a win type weekend.
Absolutely. I love it. So I do like the fact that you're telling folks to make some moves. I had to go out there and do that in our home league as well, making some moves to, really made a move that is going to, it's a gamble either way that you look at it. I'm either betting that on a championship roster, or the move that I make will ultimately do my season. But I was on the bubble anyway, as far as that. Like, I was probably going to be a playoff team, things like that, but it was not going to be a deep playoff run there. So some things like that are things worth thinking about there and looking far enough ahead there, to the point where if you're going to be on the bubble anyway, make the moves, make the things that you're either going to miss, but you're trending to miss or be on the edge anyway. Make the moves that give you the opportunity and give you the upside to go out and have a championship type of roster there. So I absolutely love that you're giving everybody that opinion and that viewpoint and sharing that bit of wisdom there. But I think that's going to go ahead and do it for us. Again, Kevin, happy birthday to you. And
thanks, buddy. No place I'd rather be.
I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and we're going to call it a night, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor, head over to the YouTube channel, click the subscribe button, ring the bell. It's one of the best ways to help support the show. Plus, by doing that, you'll get all the notifications when we go live on that Tuesday night, 11 p.m. Eastern. Friday night, this show here, we went live at 11 p.m. Eastern, and then Sunday morning, 11:45 a.m. Eastern. And thanks for everybody letting us along on your fantasy football journey. And you can hit us up with any questions, anything like that in the meantime on our socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Good Old Boys FF. Although at this point, I don't know if it's Facebook anymore, or it's Meta, or I'm sure that there's a Ron Artest joke in there as well that I could make. But either way, you can find us at Good Old Boys FF. For Kevin, I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe.